Welcome to the Consciousness Anywhere and Everywhere podcast. I am Shannon O'Hara, and I invite you to a completely new world of possibilities. Welcome, everybody in the universe, to the Consciousness Anywhere and Everywhere podcast. Today, I am so excited to tell you about a life improving possibility, a new book called The Gift of Allowance. Today, I'm joined by the author, Gary Douglas. Welcome.
Thank you. Let's talk first about my co-author in this, really, who is Dean Larson, because he took the information and filled it out more so that it was more acceptable and more usable by more people, which I think is great. And I did a fabulous job of it. And it's like he kept my tone, he kept everything, but he added the pieces that made it more acceptable to people, more easily understandable. And he did a great job, and I'm in love with the book. And I have been reading it, and I just can't. I have to get a new copy because I had to give my copy away because somebody was crying, trying to get it from me.
That's funny because I also can't wait to order some more copies. I've read it. I've listened to it all the way through on audiobook, and it's read by another colleague of ours, Tim French. He does a great job. He's a professional voice actor in Hollywood, and I love that he reads this book. It's not Hollywood. He just sounds fabulous. And what I really loved about this book is, full disclosure, allowance has been something that I have personally struggled with implementing, understanding, and utilizing.
Never had any struggle at all. Oh, yeah, I did.
And this book really, it was like it was the kindergarten, grade school, high school, university steps that I needed to really get the small bits to the big bits. So that's what I'm so glad this book has been produced and it's available out in the world now.
Me too. I'm actually I've engaged with Dean to also work with me and creating the Deal and Deliver book so that we can get that out in the world where people can actually understand it, because they don't.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what, the Deal and Deliver, I don't want to deviate too much from the topic of allowance in this conversation. However, the Deal and Deliver information revolutionized the way that I did business and how how the interactions in my relationships work, making it about 1 trillion times easier on me. So I can't wait till that information is more available in the world.
Me too. But let's go on with allowance.
So where should we begin with what is allowance? So what do you mean by allowance?
Allowance is, you have to realize that allowance is being the rock in the stream. When you're in a stream and the water comes around you, if you're a rock in the stream, the water comes at you, goes around you, and moves on. If you're in alignment and agreement with the stream, then you have to be washed away from where you are. And if you're in resistance and reacting to it, then you have to be moved away from where you are. So it's like being a rock in the stream means that you just sit there and you have no point of view. You just sit there and receive whatever's going on, whatever's going around you, without a need to change.
Which, let me tell you, the two big difficulties for me with that, that I really struggled with, that I have had actually quite some progress with after reading this book. The first one was, I remember when I was a teenager, I remember you talking about like having no point of view, essentially being the rock in the stream. And I remember thinking, but if I don't have a point of view, if I receive everything that's going on, like, I'm going to essentially disappear or be destroyed.
Yeah. Yes, but that's what most of us think. And that's the greatest difficulty we have, is we think we'll disappear if we don't have a point of view. Our point of view is what we think equals who we are. It isn't, but it's who we think we are.
So let's take quite a few steps forward. Fast forward to, imagine, everybody that's listening, you no longer identify with your point of view. You perceive yourself without a point of view, so more as an infinite being. So then, if we're no longer using our point of view to identify who we are, protect us from other people's points of view, et cetera, how does allowance become, how do we implement allowance practically?
Well, you got to realize that in allowance, you got to know the person you're dealing with. The thing is, if you're dealing with somebody, like I just dealt with somebody who was yelling at me, and I wrote him a little note and I said, when you've created a $36 million a year business, you can yell at me, but not until, you know. And it's like, because I didn't see his point of view the way he wanted me to see it. I saw what was true, and I had an interesting point of view about what was true. And I have already been working on creating a solution to the problem that he thinks is the problem that isn't the problem. But he's decided what the problem is, and that is where he went out of interesting point of view. He has no interesting point of view. He has the point of view he's right. Unfortunately, the point of view you're right, it kind of screws everything out.
Right. Having the point of view that you're right or wrong isn't allowance for you.
Yeah.
I believe it's in the second chapter of the book. There's an interesting passage about how when you're not an allowance, you're essentially sticking yourself. And I actually wish I apologize because I wish I had extracted that passage to read it accurately here. I'll do my best. But basically, it was an indication of when you're not in allowance, the energy is stuck. As soon as you get into allowance about a point of view, you're releasing all this stuck energy.
Yeah.
That allows you to have essentially not be stuck, which is what I thought was the statement in itself was so simplistic. However, the implications of that, if we look at our lives, how much of our lives do we spend literally stuck, circling around a point of view that we cannot get free of or free from?
Well, it's not that we cannot, we will not.
Right.
Okay. Because we take a point of view that we're right about this, then you will fight to the death to defend that point of view, which is what the guy was doing this morning with me.
Which is, I think many of us can relate to doing. I'm just thinking about my marriage. It's like, I've been married for 10 years, which I've been happily married for 10 years, and it's getting better and better all the time. And one of the aspects that I attribute to that possibility is you really driving home to me that I have to be an allowance. Otherwise, I'm going to destroy my relationship.
Yeah, because it's like every relationship is destroyed by where somebody is not an allowance. You know, it's like your mother had the point of view that I was not including her in everything I did, and that I needed to be aware that she was in charge. And it's like, I thought we were in this together. She said, no, I know what's right and I know how to do relationship. You don't. I went,
cool.
Wow, interesting point of view.
So can we talk about how allowance isn't being a doormat either?
Well, it's like I had to say to your mother at that point, I said to her, look, I'm never going to turn out the way you want me to. I'm never going to be the man you want me to be. You should divorce me. She goes, no, I love you. I went, okay, then you need to get who I am and not expect that of me. And she was expecting and projecting that I needed to change all the time. And I didn't project and expect her to change. I allowed her to be who she was and have the points of view she did. We could have gotten along had she been willing to change anything, but she actually wasn't.
And so at what point for you, when you're looking at, we'll just use this example of when you're in a relationship with somebody and they want you to change in ways that are not necessarily going to create greater for you. How do you, because I think I think allowance can be easily mistaken or misunderstood as tolerance or being.
True. And it's like what I did when I said, you know what, you better divorce me because I'm never going to be the man you want me to be. You know, I was stating what was true, which is not being a doormat.
So you had allowance for you in that you couldn't necessarily be what she wanted you to be, and you had allowance for that.
I knew I couldn't be that, and I was willing to have her not be happy with me if that's what she wanted.
Which is which is, I believe, a very it's a completely different mechanism of interpersonal relationships, at
Right.
least in the majority of the society that I've seen and understood this lifetime. There might be some Zen masters or some Kung Fu masters, some Indian yogis who are living, who have this this level of allowance like inbuilt into their psyche, or at least it's something that they have sought. However, allowance for self and allowance for others is not only, from my perspective, deficient in most societies today, it's almost a undesirable.
Well, it's undesirable, and it's because it's all about our feelings.
Say
You
more
know,
about that.
yeah, because it's like in our society now, we have this point of view that you have to take into considerations other people's feelings to determine what you're going to choose. And it's like, and the thing is that if you have an awareness of other people's feelings, but you don't have to change to match their feelings or to allow their feelings to be, then you have you and they have them. It's like what we have with the Zen masters. They have become masters by withdrawing from society, not by functioning with society. This is what I'm trying to do, is give you the Zen capacity to function with society as it is now.
And not lose yourself.
Yeah, and not lose yourself, not give yourself up, because my point of view is like each one of us is a unique character and a unique person, and there's nothing wrong with us except our own judgments of us.
That's beautiful.
If we can give up the judgments, we can have more allowance for us.
I love that. And it's almost like we're coming full circle with this. The more you have allowance for you, or the more you have allowance, the better, the easier it is for you to function in society.
Yeah.
Which I would even say that I still have something where I believe I have to be right or not be wrong to be functional.
Yeah. See, if you have to be right, that's being that's being in alignment and agreement or resistance or reaction to some point of view. If you have to be right or you have to be wrong about anything, that's alignment, agreement, or resistance or reaction. If you have no necessity to be either of those, then you can look at what it is and go, okay, and what can I change, or what can I be different, or how can I be different? How can we do this in a different way?
And I just want to highlight that you went into question there, which
Yeah.
I was going to ask, like, okay, so if you remove alignment and agreement and resistance and reaction from the equation, like if everybody listening to this right now just did this exercise, this self-exploration exercise with us, if you remove alignment and agreement and resistance and reaction as an option, if those are gone, like, then what? And
then
where
what?
you
Question.
there, yeah, you went into question, which I believe is that, yeah.
That's what I always do. I go into question, because I'm of the opinion, and it's an opinion, that question is the greatest source for possibility that exists in the world, and few of us use it, even though we could all the time.
Well, I mean, I would even ask, like, is possibility is possibility usually the target of people's lives and living?
No, being right or being wrong is usually the target of most people's life and living. And that's one of the things that Dean has done beautifully with this. He put that in such a way that you can get it better than I gave it out.
Oh, oh, yeah. Oh, don't be so modest. It's done well, and I think it is a really beautiful book to read and digest.
Yes.
And it's like I'm really grateful for even the possibility of allowance as a option in life, which I wouldn't have really understood or known if it hadn't been for you being really persistent and consistent about stating the values and benefits of allowance.
Yeah. For me, it's like once I got allowance, and it took me a good 6 months to a year before I really got it. Because interesting point of view, I have this point of view, was not innately my way of functioning. I was going, that's not right. I go, okay, It's like I was willing to look at and judge people for being wrong in what they were choosing.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I was choosing right. But I realized that my rightness was somebody else's not interesting point of view. And my need to be right was not going to create greater. My willingness to be in awareness of what their point of view was and see how it could function different was brilliantly wonderful and amazing and changed my whole life. In a year, my whole life changed, but it took me a whole year to do it. I mean, I had to do interesting point of view. I have this point of view for every point of view I had for one full year. At the end of that year, I was a walking, talking Zen master.
And the interesting thing I just heard you say was when you were willing to see their point of view.
Yeah.
So what do you mean? Can you talk a little bit more about the willingness to see somebody else's point of view?
Well, I'm always willing to see somebody else's point of view, but when they are only interested in being right about what their point of view is and making me wrong for not seeing their point of view, then we have no discussion capacity at all. All capacity for discussion, all capacity for change has gone away because all they want to do is show me how they're right and I need to do what they desire, demand, or suggest. And it's like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Not an interesting point of view as a point of view.
I mean, it's so interesting. It seems so much to me that, I mean, what you're talking about with people and they're like demanding, I mean, I'm pretty sure that most people listening to this can relate to that thing where they've either been a recipient of somebody who was demanding of them that they be a certain way or do a certain thing, or they themselves were the dictator of the command. Yes. And it's interesting.
That's really good. That's a really good way of looking at it. Basically, when you're not an allowance, you're dictating.
Yeah.
And it's like every dictator on planet Earth is not an allowance.
Well, I've had to really check myself about, I definitely can tend towards dictator. And I have got to repeatedly humble myself to remind myself that my point of view is not the only point of view. I am not right. I am part of an infinite field of consciousness that can contribute in ways that I might not be able to imagine, but I won't be able to access unless I'm in more allowance.
Exactly. Brilliant way to put it.
Which to me just brings so much more into my life. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is when you're not an allowance, you're eliminating, not adding.
Yeah, you're eliminating possibilities and you're eliminating change that could happen in favor of the rightness of your point of view.
So if no one could be right, what could the world look like?
It would look like an ever-changing possibility of infinite possibilities changing to infinite possibilities that are more infinite than the last possibilities.
And if no one could control that.
The other reason people do not do allowance, they want control.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to get control, then you have already decided and come to conclusion that you're right. And that conclusion and this, elimination of possibility has defined where you are, what you are, where you will go, and what's next in your life. If you want that to be your defining reality, then it is. So be it. You shall fail. No, you shall succeed. No, you shall be wrong. No, you shall be right. No. What shall you be? What would you like to be?
All of the above, and all of the above is possible to rise to the level of your limitation. And what I really have appreciated / been super frustrated with about allowance is when it's applied, when I've been able to apply it effectively, it's allowed a level of change. And I'm thinking primarily, I mean, I can relate it to my marriage, but I also run a business and I work with a lot of people, and I have had many opportunities to implement allowance when I was so frustrated with a way a project was going or the way something was being handled in the business. And
really good point there. It's like when you're frustrated and you're upset, you're out of allowance.
And I
When
had
you're
an interesting.
frustration tends to leave and solution presents itself.
Yeah, and so a lot of the solutions, it's like I had an opportunity. One of the things that and I'm going to reiterate for anybody listening to this, it's like I earlier you said in this conversation, you said it took you about 6 months to really get allowance. I'm going to be really humble myself here and be really honest. I still haven't gotten allowance. It's been 15 years.
Oh well, he gets it.
You get it when you get it, and I think other things have come to me more easily, like knowing and perceiving and a bunch of other stuff that I would say I've gotten. Allowance I am still getting. So I think it's kind of ironic that I'm having this conversation with you about allowance. I wish I could say that I was a master of allowance.
Have you by any chance looked at the things you brought up in this discussion and realized that those are indications of abilities you have?
No, I had not done that. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, when you talked about learning to be more in allowance in your relationship,
Yeah.
ability you created and generated, and it's something you need not judge yourself for.
Mm.
May not be perfect, but your relationship is getting better.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's a gift that few people will ever have and few people will ever choose.
Well, thanks for that. Thank you for that, helping me actually acknowledge where I am getting. Thank you for that, where I am getting allowance. So riddle me this. I was having a work meeting a few days ago and dealing with a very technically complex, not particularly fun thing having to do with databases and internet controls and spam and blah, blah. And I had an extreme moment of frustration in the middle of the meeting because from my perspective, like no one was really looking at what was required, and everything I suggested was being kind of disregarded.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. Okay.
Yeah, please.
Did you have a fixed point of view?
That's the thing. I was trying to, I realized that when I realized in the frustration that I must have been controlling and I must have had a point of view I was trying to bend the energy to, but I couldn't really work out what my point of view was.
Trying to bend the energy, not see what could happen. You got to be in the curiosity of what can happen if I have no point of view here.
Oh my God. And then I go into like the curiosity of what could happen. There are so many possibilities, and what could happen could be horrible things. And what could happen could work out better than I could imagine.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
Why do you assume they'll be horrible?
And now, as I'm realizing when I said that, I realized it wasn't actually my point of view. It could be horrible. It was somebody else's point of view.
Yeah.
So then in that
view.
So I must have been trying to change that I must have been trying to change that point of view for somebody.
Yes. Yes. And you got to allowance is, okay, I can't change their point of view. Only they can.
So then how do I work with somebody who has that point of view, who's like deep in a project and really at the core of it, who has that point of view, who keeps on bringing that? So using allowance, like how would I actually deal with that?
In the meeting.
How? But so.
Okay. You know what? I've had all I can stand of this. We have to talk another time. We got to stop now.
That's interesting. Cause I actually, in my frustration, I almost said like, okay, I'm done. And like left the meeting, but I really wanted to get to some action resolutions that I thought were important.
You got to give up that point of view in order to have allowance.
Oh,
sorry.
Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, you've taught me repeatedly about letting things fail.
Yes, and you've got to let people fail at what they're trying to do before they will choose to change sometimes.
So if it wasn't about that person changing.
It was about that person's point of view that they didn't want to change.
Oh, I'm so stuck. So this must be where I don't have allowance for what? What am I not an allowance of with this
Not
person's
allowance of you're not being able to change things instantaneously when you see them.
True. Very true.
The thing
Yeah.
is, your ability to see is different than everybody else's. Their ability to
Correct.
see is different than yours.
Yes.
You know, it's like I see somebody who has like decided that our business is failing because we're not able to do what he thinks we should be able to do, even though I'm working on getting that handled in the next month and a half.
Okay. So regardless of you getting it handled, regardless of your actions, what do you so
Point of view is I don't know what I'm talking about.
right. I guess I didn't want to see that that was also this other person's point of view about me, that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's their point of view. It's one of the reasons I don't get involved with
Yeah.
technical stuff.
Yeah.
I just let them go do it because they're all full of shit.
Huh.
You know, I let people deal with the technical stuff because they like that. I don't. You know, and I will
Well,
look at it and go, we can't do this.
I am noticing in this conversation, when we're having these very like practical real life examples of allowance versus not having allowance in these situations, where I'm getting to in this is like, and I apologize because I'm making this extremely personal, which I guess is mostly me indulging myself in this conversation.
No,
I'm getting
it's how you give other people awareness, honey. It's not that.
cool. Well, where I'm going, what's coming up is it just seems to me like allowance can blend itself to so much mess.
Yes, but it allows the mess to be a mess so it can straighten itself out.
That's the part that part
Yes.
of letting things straighten themselves out.
I think you may have somewhere in here, I think you may have decided that you have to avoid messes because they just become messier, which is not necessarily the case.
Right. Right.
Sometimes a mess occurs, and when that mess occurs, awareness becomes available.
Right. Which I also know to be very true. I think we all can relate to that in how many of us have made mistakes or made messes in our lives. And it wasn't until we got to that.
Never made a mess. Oh, yeah, I have.
You know,
I'm good at it.
when we finally realize, like, okay, I need to make a different choice or something has to be done different here. So I get that.
Okay, now that is something you need to acknowledge in you. You have the ability to ask, okay, I need to do something different. I need to change that something. You have the awareness of those as you do so many other awarenesses. And you've got to acknowledge those awarenesses or you will not be an allowance of you.
Well, that is awesome. Allowance of you, allowance of self is like, for me, it's this heal all salve that takes away all that hard, sharp
It does.
experience of living.
Yep.
So then what would you say to, I'm being the devil's advocate here. What would you say to people who are like abusive or mean people who like, where does allowance for self, how is allowance for self different than being a sociopath?
Well, a sociopath always knows they're right and they're only going to stop the rightness point of view if you give in.
And versus allowance for self is,
wow, I'm sorry. I realized I have an appointment. I have to go now.
but what does the person who's sorry because they have to have an appointment now, what is that person realizing or looking at?
It's the lie that allows the person to sit with the allowance that they're who they have decided they are is right for them. If I have an appointment, it's because I don't want to talk about this subject anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Who was married for like 70 years. And her point of view was that, my bill used to say to me, this subject is now closed, which meant we couldn't discuss it anymore because I wasn't going to convince him of my point of view, and he wasn't going to convince me of his point of view.
Right. So it was
it's allowance of the other person has their point of view, and you have to let them have their point of view. Right or wrong, good or bad, it's their point of view.
So I see the actions in both of those examples. With the sociopath, they believe they're right and they only yield. They stop when the other person yields to their point of view.
Yeah.
And then the person who's an allowance doesn't try to get the other person to yield to their point of view. They just essentially change and leave.
Know when to stop talking.
Know when to stop talking. But what is it that's the fundamental difference in the choice matrix of a sociopath versus somebody who's in allowance?
A sociopath is always right.
And somebody who's in allowance is
always knows when to stop talking. Give up trying to get your point of view across. It ain't going to work.
Give up. That's an interesting one because so how do you reconcile never quit, never give in, never give up with give up when you know it's time to stop talking?
Like the guy I was talking to this morning, I hung up on him.
Right. Okay.
Because he had already decided he had it right and he knew it was right and everybody else had it wrong. And we had to see the truth of what was true for him.
Right. And you were,
but I had already gone over the figures with other people who are also in the thread of things. And they actually showed me what was occurring and why they did what they did, the way they did it, and how it was working and what was right about it. He was not going to get that because his point of view is you're accumulating debt.
Well, and what's also true about you is you will not be dictated to.
I will not be dictated to. I'm not a tater dick, and I'm not going to be tater dick too.
You have really probably single-handedly taught me about cooperation and about listening to people and being inclusive about stuff, which as I've grown older, I have noticed is a very absent function in a lot of people, which I believe you are really essentially restoring a lost art.
I am doing my very best.
And the thing that people don't know, which I do know, which I will share with people, is that you, before you started your consciousness, your corporate career in consciousness, your incorporation of consciousness, you were quite a Renaissance man and a jack of all trades. And one of your trades is as an antiques dealer. So growing up in the house, you were always restoring beautiful things that had been neglected and let to deteriorate for hundreds of years. And you'd be restoring them with your waxes and your chemicals and there was always a restoration project occurring. And I'm realizing in this conversation, I don't think I got this when we started the conversation, but allowance is almost like this. It's a lost skill that that really is hard to find where to be taught that skill, because most people who were masters in allowance are no longer part of society.
Yeah, they withdraw from society to be an allowance of it, where I engage with society to be an allowance of it. And it's like, I mean, I just bought a new cabinet here for the castle. It's a stunning piece of work. And it's a mess. It's not functioning. It's not functional. And so I called the boys and I said, okay, you got to come up and take this thing and fix it, make it work beautifully. And they're going, but. I said, you can do it. I know you can. They're going, but. Yep, you're right. You'll do it. Because I have already decided they will fix it and they will do it because they don't want to disappoint me.
And you have allowance for them believing that they can't, And you also have allowance for knowing that it's totally possible that they can.
Yeah, and they will. Because like me, they are into seeing how to restore things to what they were, because that's a gift that they have that they don't even realize. Okay. They have no clue they have that gift. They think
Mm.
they're just field hands, basically.
Well,
Yeah.
something you said maybe 60 seconds ago was about the difference between people who, again, try to leave society to have allowance versus those who engage with society, and you engage with society. And I
Okay.
realized that that was something I haven't actually consciously chosen, because I spent a huge amount of my late teens and 20s trying to escape and get away from society and
Well,
responsibility.
like, you didn't exactly have good references for how to be with society, including me.
Well, but who does? Who is really taught the art of
Most people don't. Most people
yeah.
don't have that ability. And that's what I try to institute in people and to help people with, is learning how to engage in society so that you can become greater and have more and create more and generate more and have a better life than anybody else does. And I think I'm succeeding. Could be wrong.
Well, it's interesting. I've been following Robert Kennedy Jr. on Instagram, and I have never been a political person. It's not something that hugely interests me, but he's somebody you brought to my attention, and I've been paying more attention, and I've been just watching him, and I'm like, wow, this guy has a lot of courage, and he's willing. I watch him willing to put up with huge criticism, fear of death, threats of death, like really being quite controversial, and
Well, I
also
mean,
quite.
if you look at his family, I mean, sorry, didn't know this was going to happen. JFK, when he was shot, I was a kid, and I saw it on TV, and the horror of it blew me away. And then, you know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s father was shot too. And it's like, to know that when you go against the powers that be the way it is, you can be killed, and you have the courage to do that. You are a unique, unique person. And if I get killed, I'm fine. Because
Well,
I know
something.
I'm going against the grain here too.
And
Okay.
and I just would like to state that, like, something that you have succeeded in teaching me, and I will speak for myself here, is you have given me the tools, allowance included, to be the unique expression of possibility that I can be.
And you're willing to stand out from the crowd and be different too.
Exactly. And it's this allowance that I've been watching, Robert Kennedy Jr. It's an incredible function of putting your face right in the shit of life, right in the shit stream, and being,
I am here. I am the rock.
exactly. That is the engaging with society part that
Yes.
I haven't I have not committed to. I'm always
You
trying to
sure?
get
You
away
sure?
from dealing with people, not.
Sure.
Well, I would say I haven't committed to it. I still have reactions in dealing with people.
Yeah, but the thing is, the more you have allowance, the more you will become everything you've already become, and become more dynamically that, and more a gift to everybody around you. People love you.
And so, too bad love doesn't make everything work. Isn't that annoying?
Yes, love does, if it's from allowance.
I
Oops.
mean, we've already given so much in this podcast. Do you want to talk a little bit about the difference between love from no allowance and love from allowance?
Love from no allowance is conditional love. Love from allowance is unconditional love, because you will love the person no matter how crazy they are.
Beautiful. And that there is quite a great section in the book about love and allowance that I have actually listened to 5 times because every time I'm like, wait, I will say you do need to pay attention to the book because the concepts are so different that you have to really learn them.
They're designed specifically to change the way you see the world.
Yeah.
And that's the gift that Dean is. And I'm so grateful for him as the person he is and what he does. Now, he got his start dealing with kids that were troubled kids and helping them learn to do school when they couldn't. And he has been Xander's tutor for a couple of years. And it's like, I am so grateful that Xander has that, because he always encourages allowance of him learning on his own.
That's beautiful.
I think that's an amazing gift to give any kid. And
Absolutely.
it's the gift to give my kids and failed at.
Have you?
Well, I just didn't get them all the way there. I got them part way there.
Just to speak on behalf of your wild children, you have some fucking wild children. And
I do. Be as wild as they wanted to be.
I don't think I even realized how wild and unusual our family was until my 40s. And I knew more of the world, and I knew other families, and I've lived in, 5 different countries, and I had to really, and I look back, and I will say that, you have, however, parented with allowance, which is something that I have really thrived in response to. So
thank you. I'm glad you have, and it makes me happy that you have, and that you've done as amazing as you have in life and are doing more all the time. And I am grateful. You and Grace have, been amazing. Your 2 brothers, they're still trying to find their way.
So what gift can allowance be to the world? And again, the title of the book is The Gift of Allowance. The greatest gift that allowance can be is allowing you to be you as the person you truly be. That's the gift to the world. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. There will be a link to the Gift of Allowance book down in the show notes or in the social post or wherever you're seeing this. And if you don't see the link, the title of the book is The Gift of Allowance, authored by Gary M. Douglas. And anything else you'd like to add before we finish today?
Yeah, be you. You're great.
Yahoo! Thank you for listening to this show. My target is to make consciousness easy to find and choose. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes and share this with somebody who who might be looking for more consciousness in their life. You can visit me on shannon-o'hara.com or talktotheentities.com. And to learn more about the amazing tools of Access Consciousness, you can visit accessconsciousness.com and be sure to subscribe to the podcast.